Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the HerStory Online Summit, Day 12. Yes, Day 12. We have extended our summit, especially for one particular speaker, and she is going to open up our day with a bit of inspiration. So, Erica is a veteran meeting and event strategist who's turned into a purpose-driven entrepreneur who believes it's never too late to find your calling, that women can do anything, and that community creates magic. After 20 plus years in events and scaling, her business is now a seven-figure business, nationally recognized agency, and Erica hit burnout and a breakthrough, a transformative 2019 keynote in Toronto reframed her mission: help women do great things. So, Erica, it gives me great pleasure to bring you on stage to share your amazing story with our community today. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I grew up in a bar. My grandparents purchased the bar, the oldest bar in Indiana, 15 years before I was born. My dad took over when my grandfather died, and I was 4 years old at the time. My name is Erica Biddix, and I am an entrepreneur. And my daddy, he was my entrepreneurial hero. My dad's life was dedicated to upholding his parents' legacy with that bar. And that meant that I spent my youth cooking in the kitchen, my teens exploring the tunnels underground that had served in the Underground Railroad. And in my early 20s, I even met my husband in that bar. The smell of cigarette smoke, the smell of stale beer, the sound of a pinball machine can instantly transport me back to that building that I knew inside and out. Over the course of 35 years, my dad turned that one-room lunch counter into a building that became an internationally recognized premier venue for blues music. To this day, it's not unusual for me to see someone at Disney World or in Italy wearing a shirt from the bar. It was always a part of my life, and it always will be. But while that sounds idyllic, the story hides the reality of entrepreneurship. The side that we oftentimes see on social media or in trainings where we're going to become millionaires as entrepreneurs, that's the story we hear. But I want to tell you the real story of entrepreneurship. What's important for you all to know is that my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and I moved from Indiana to Texas. So I only saw my dad 6 weeks every summer, and I got to spend a few extra weeks there every other Christmas. And while I say that I got to spend time with my dad, the reality is that I just got to be in the same city as him and sometimes in the same building because my dad was always at the bar. My dad and that bar were one and the same. He had employees that he had to care for. He had bills that had to be paid. He had a legacy that he had to uphold. He also didn't have the ability, because of those things, to be the kind of dad that he wanted to be. So I saw someone who would do anything for his business and for his employees, but who oftentimes felt like he had fallen short when it came to fatherhood. When I first decided to step into entrepreneurship, I asked my dad to meet me for a late lunch. We met up at a small barbecue restaurant, and because of the time of day, we were the only ones there. We were speaking very openly about his business, about my questions. The owner of that restaurant was the one serving us, and he caught on pretty quickly about what bar it was that my dad owned. So he interrupted us. He said, "Can I ask you some questions?" And my dad, because he always said yes to everybody, said, "Sure, ask away." And the owner said, "I'm thinking about growing the size of this restaurant. Do you have any advice for me?" And I fully expected my dad to give him advice on where to find vendors to build a larger space, or where to purchase additional equipment, or how to scale the size of his staff. And instead, my dad said something that about knocked me over because I had never heard anything like it come out of his mouth. He said to that owner, "Don't do it just to do it." And then he continued with, "Sometimes I wish we had remained a one room lunch counter instead of growing as large as we did." And at 47 years old, that is the only time I ever heard my dad say anything, even remotely along the lines of the fact that entrepreneurship had cost him an awful lot. He, in that moment, admitted that he had some responsibility for choices he had made when it came to entrepreneurship and how it impacted his family. It's funny as I think about it because my dad passed away in 2021. And that bar is such a big deal that his passing was on the front page of the Indianapolis newspaper. And that night, as we lifted a beer to him in the bar, we heard them talk about his passing on the news. But the legacy they talked about for him was the bar, not the family that he cared so much about that had been left behind. My entrepreneurial journey started in 2016, and it's been filled with more ups and downs than I have time to tell you about here. It included opening two businesses, keeping them both functioning throughout a global pandemic. Eventually, I scaled one of those two businesses to seven figures, and I hit rock bottom at the same time that happened. Because my entrepreneurial story includes plenty of me ignoring the lessons I should have learned from my dad's experience. Rolling into business ownership, it very quickly became all about the money. Where was the next dollar coming from? Because I no longer had a steady paycheck. I would take gigs I didn't want to take. I would work with people I didn't want to work with. I would work hours that I did not want to be working. I entered entrepreneurship with a business plan, but without a plan for how to integrate it into my life. A life that I share with a wonderful husband, with three fantastic kids and two adorable puppies. For years and years and years, I did to myself what my dad had once done to himself as an entrepreneur. And then one day I magically hit that seven-figure number as an agency. And instead of celebrating, I found that was the day I also hit rock bottom when it came to business ownership and actually being a human with a family and friends and support network. So our branding back in the day was black and gold, very similar to this picture that I showed you of my dad and little baby Erica. And our business mottos are be cool, be kind, and be nice. So I have this bright yellow, very bright yellow shirt that has those words on it: be cool, be kind, be nice. And then a few years later, we changed our branding. We rolled out the bright yellow. And so that shirt became a piece of pajamas, if I'm being honest. Cut it up. I wear it at least once a week. I just grab it and don't even think about it, and surely have not paid any attention to what the shirt says for a very long time. I was on vacation in Nashville with some friends. We were staying at an Airbnb. I was brushing my teeth in the morning and had that t-shirt on. And something about that shirt caught my eye in the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I saw what the shirt said. It said, be cool, be kind, be nice. And I dropped my toothbrush and I ran into my friend's bedroom. I was obviously pretty teary. And she said, are you okay? I said, I'm not okay because my brain just exploded. And she said, why? What happened? And I said, I just saw what my shirt says, and I haven't been cool or kind or nice to my family. She wiped my tears. I went back to continue getting ready, thinking about that moment we had just had. And suddenly, I ran back to her room, this time tears streaming down my face. And she said, Erica, what is wrong? Are you okay? And I said, I am not okay because my brain just exploded for a second time. I have not been cool or kind or nice to myself as an entrepreneur. Y'all, it is hard to admit that I entered into something thinking I was going to do it one way, and eventually admitting that maybe I didn't get it right that first time. So what changed? What changed was I put into place what my dad never had and what I spent years fighting against: boundaries. I committed to boundaries. I committed to understanding what my goals as an entrepreneur and as a business were. And I made a commitment to redefine what entrepreneurship was going to look like. I decided, despite my daddy being my entrepreneurial hero, that I was going to do it a different and a better way. Since that moment with the yellow shirt a few years ago, I have committed to specifically working with women who are becoming or who are business owners with what we're talking about here, helping them to commit to setting up or redesigning their business in a way that utilizes the guardrails of boundaries and of aspirations and building their business within there. But here's the thing: when I said my dad and that bar were one and the same, that holds true for just about every entrepreneur. And the outcome of that is that anytime a decision needs to be made, more often than not, the business is going to win. You've got a vacation you want to go on, but you can't leave the office. You want to go fit in a workout, but there's always another email that you have to answer. Every time a question comes up, the general response tends to be, that won't work because, or no, we can't because. Want to go on a family vacation? You probably can't do that. And so while it's wonderful that you have the ability and the possibilities with entrepreneurship, you've got to figure out a way to keep it from the business always winning. So here's how I do that. I have a set of coffee mugs, 3 coffee mugs to be exact. And each of these coffee mugs represents a silo that we look at every decision throughout. When we are looking at these silos, we are trying to get past this won't work because. And the way we do that is by ignoring responsibilities, restrictions, rules. We simply ask the question, what does this mug want? So we have a mug that represents you. This is you just as a human, no people, no pets, no plants, no clients. When you ask the question, what does this mug want and need? I want you to answer that question honestly, again, without worrying about the no because. What is the true answer? Doesn't mean that's what you're going to go with, but let's at least figure out what the answer is to what does this coffee mug want and need. The next one is your business. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, that's fine. I can think about my business as standalone. You can't. That's why we're always letting the business win, because we'll think about things like, oh, how does that impact the paycheck I'm going to take home? Or how's that going to impact my calendar? And that's actually not healthy for the business. So when you're looking at the business coffee mug, I want you to think of this silo as just the business and without you as a factor in it. So I want you to take away, again, the restrictions, the realities, how it may impact your life, and truly answer the question in this decision, what is the want and need for the business alone? And then the third coffee mug is your family or your community, whoever it is that you do life with. Any decisions that you make are going to impact also the people who are represented in this silo. And what's really, really important with this coffee mug is that in the you coffee mug, it was just you, nobody else. In the business coffee mug, you're not involved. You're off to the side. This is the coffee mug that has all the people you love in it and also yourself. So as we are thinking about decisions, I want you to, instead of looking at the whole big picture and seeing all of the negative overlap, I want you to say, what does this coffee mug want and need? What does this coffee mug want and need? Which will likely be very different from what the first one answered. And then the third coffee mug, what does it want and need? As you take those decisions and put them separately away from each other, you'll start to see where there's positive overlap that happens. My husband had an opportunity to take a new job, and we could have sat around and talked in circles for how it was going to impact our family or how it was going to impact who was driving what kid where, et cetera, et cetera. And if we'd done that, again, there would have been a lot of no, that won't work because. Instead, I sent him away to work in silence to think about what his individual you coffee mug wanted. He came back. We sat together and we talked about how was it going to impact his work life without talking about our kids or about our calendar or about our bank account, but just simply his work life. And then finally, we talked about what our family needed. Did we want more income? Were we going to be okay with less time with daddy around? And when we did that, we started to see where the positive overlaps were. And we were able to make that decision in a way that worked best for my husband and that honored all of the work that he has done over decades, that worked for the place that he works and loves and respects so much. And that was the best decision for our family as well. So I'll encourage you to think about your 3 individual silos if you need to. Picture these coffee mugs. With the women I work with, we talk about it all the time. My admin will actually say to me, but what about this coffee mug? So I want you to think about that so that you can be cool, be kind, and be nice to yourself.
Erica, thank you so,
Thank you,
so much.
Gertrude.
What an amazing reminder this morning to prioritize what's important in life. And those coffee mugs are a great analogy.
I love these mugs, Gertrude.
Yeah, they really demonstrate that if you put everything in its place, you're setting the boundaries around those 3 important areas in your life.
You are.
So, if burnout is a symptom, what's the disease that you see most women entrepreneurs catching, and who profits from it?
Absolutely. I would say the disease is lack of boundaries. I think we see boundaries as negative. Even when I ask someone to define a boundary, to list a boundary, it's almost always said in a negative way. I don't answer email after 6 p.m. Whereas if you look at it as I answer email until 6 p.m., there's a positive way to put it. And also, there are plenty of boundaries that we're using in everyday life. And there's really no need for it to have this negative connotation. If you don't have good eyesight, you wear glasses or contacts when you drive.
Yeah.
That is a boundary, right? And I think it's just overcoming the idea that setting boundaries makes you difficult, makes you hard to work with, etc. So the answer to it is who's profiting from it is everyone else.
But you.
A lot of who are not women are profiting from the women who are not having their own boundaries within their businesses.
So, what's a boundary that you set that cost you money but saved your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am really committed to being able to spend time with my kiddos while they are still young. I realize that is not revolutionary, but it's important for me to be able to be at all of their sporting events. That's a really great example. Well, the way I make money is I coach women live 1-to-1, and having to leave the office every day at 2:00 means that I have limited the amount of hours that I have available to coach those women. That's a boundary that's important to me. It's a boundary that will change as my children's sporting activities change or as their ages change, as my oldest goes away to college. And so that boundary will then get adjusted to adjust for the time that we're in. One thing I do want to say is I set boundaries continually. So my life runs kind of in school semesters, both with my kids and with my husband working at a university. So we oftentimes are shifting the boundaries based on it's a new school semester or it's summer vacation or it's the holiday season. So the boundaries tend to shift all the time. Yep.
They are shifting with time.
Yeah.
So, what metric should women entrepreneurs boycott tomorrow? And what should replace it?
Absolutely. I believe that we don't put enough value on identifying a number that we can be happy with, that if we hit that number, we can say, you know what, I'm just not going to work anymore because I hit the number I wanted. And unfortunately, what we see is this 7-figure situation or become a millionaire. And not everybody wants to be a millionaire, but they're being told constantly they need to be.
Mm,
So part of my problem with the business when I first started was I just didn't have that number. So I took every dollar that came in and never had a stopping point. Like I never had a point to say, you know what? I have hit what I need to hit. I'm going to quit and let myself rest today.
yeah,
So to me, it's letting someone else define what the numbers are for you as opposed to defining the number for yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
So if you could ban one word from the entrepreneurship vocabulary because it harms women,
Yes.
is it and why?
I'm going to give you two because I can't do just one. And I
Okay.
just used one of them, the word just. I am just an entrepreneur. I just teach people whatever. The word just undercuts us continually, and we use it on ourselves and we use it on others. And it is the most undercut word that is out there. The
Mm,
other word is little. One time I had someone reach out and ask me if my little business could make a donation to their auction. I have never felt so offended in my life about how someone referred to my business. Size is relative because
mm,
somebody may be okay with their business being small and they
yeah,
define small as this set of boundaries.
yeah.
Really small is something so that other people can measure it. If it's within your boundaries, size doesn't matter. It's a business you've built within the boundaries, the time, the effort, the bandwidth that you have. So I don't want anybody who is watching me ever again use the words just or little when they're
Mm,
talking about their own business or another person's business.
okay. So what's the most unpopular stance that you hold about the hustle culture
Yeah.
that you refuse to soften?
I refuse to it all goes back to the money. I refuse for any woman to say she's not going to have a business because she doesn't have time to make this certain amount of money, or that her business is little because it's not this amount of money, or
Mhm.
that she's not successful because she's not made this amount of money. For some people, $100 is a tremendous amount of money. For other people, $100 is a drop in the bucket and they
Yeah.
would accidentally throw it away and never care. We
Mm,
all live very different lives and we can never understand exactly what individual people are feeling, understanding what they're coming at because we've not lived their lives. We've not walked in their shoes. And to
yeah.
tell someone, this is what you have to do, I'm not here for it. If someone comes to me and says, I want to sell 12 dozen cookies a month, and someone else comes to me and says, I want to have a cookie store in every mall in the United States of America, I'm going to support both of those women the same way. And they're
Yeah.
both going to have the same frameworks. They're just going to have different boundaries in their frameworks.
So when has community failed you, and what did that teach you about building it differently?
Yeah, I go back to high school. So my daughter's in 10th grade. She is a 15, almost 16-year-old girl. And she's, oftentimes over the last few years gone through what I went through in middle school as a girl, what
Mhm.
I went through in high school as a girl. And I said to her once, that's the same thing that I went through. And she looked at me and she said, just because you went through it doesn't make it okay that I am still going through it.
Oh,
And I thought, if that is not a push for change in some capacity, I'm
yeah,
not sure what is. Because anytime I think about how community has failed me, it goes back to my youth. The
yeah,
communities that I've surrounded myself with as an adult have been nothing short of amazing, life changing, super supportive. And I really hate that it takes us until we get older to recognize that collaboration over competition really is the magic
yeah.
sauce. And if I can help make change with that with the younger generations, I will feel really good about that. But I think my daughter's working on it, so I'll give her all the credit there.
So, what's one best practice that women should ignore to grow faster and healthier?
I think the idea that you need to accomplish something in a particular time frame. So, for instance, in our business, we don't consider January to be part of Q1 because we know, generally speaking, January is a wash. Everyone is exhausted from the holidays. Those of us that have kids still have kids out of school or they're returning back to school. The
Yes.
weather plays a huge role, illness plays a role. So we just gave up on January a long time ago. Yeah. When we talk about
Realistic.
when we talk about quarters, we talk about Q1 being just February and March. And after
Right.
this year, I honestly think we may start removing August as well,
Okay.
from Q3 because for some of the very
Okay.
same reasons. So I think don't be tied to the calendar. Like you plan, you make your goals for the year, etc. We do it all the time. We tell women your life is different than any other woman's. So your calendar may be based on, school calendar or whatever. So you can't just set it up in January and call it a day. You really need to keep your eye on it. So I would say don't let the calendar dictate everything for you.
Yeah, I love it. That's really realistic.
Thank you. That is really how we try to do things here,
Yeah,
Gertrude.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would you tell a high achieving woman who secretly fears that purpose means earning less or being less?
Someone asked me that. I started working with them, and she said the last few entrepreneurs I've talked to have told me how much money they're not making. And I'm really scared. Is every entrepreneur out there just hustling and not making anything?
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to judging everything based on a number. I have been very successful in my businesses. I made myself a lot of money as a meeting and event planner. This
Right.
business, I'm 6 years in, and I've not really paid myself a solid paycheck. But what I
Hmm.
have done is I have provided a paycheck to my chief of staff. And by doing that, I have purchased my time to be able to be the kind of mom that I want to be at this
Mm,
particular moment in my life. So I
mm,
think when you look at it that way, it may not be money that you're making. It may be your time that you are making. It may be your mental capacity that you're making. I think it's
yeah.
being able to measure things differently than
Yeah.
just the numbers. And honestly, by the time I ended my meeting and events business, I cried every single time an email came in, every single time. And that does not happen to me now. And to me,
Yeah.
that is a measurement of my business being successful, that it's, keeping me happy and fulfilled. And I realize that doesn't buy groceries, but that's also why I think we look at every individual woman and talk about how are the groceries getting purchased? What does
Yeah.
need to be done? Because you can be an entrepreneur and also work for someone traditionally. You can be
Yeah.
an entrepreneur and have a side hustle that makes you money. I don't think to be an entrepreneur, you have to only be making money, however it is that you are entrepreneuring. And
Mhm.
we talk about that as an individual need for each woman also.
Yeah. It's very specific to each and every person's
Mhm.
circumstances.
Absolutely.
So, when does the quote, women can do anything, become a trap?
Hmm.
And how do you coach for strategic no's?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it becomes a trap when you think anything means everything. When we say anything, we mean you can come at it from any angle that you want to. We have one
Mhm.
woman who is a romance book editor. Never in my life before I started this business did I think that one could grow up and be a romance book editor or a romance book author coach, right? But she
Mm,
does. And that's what we mean is that you have the ability to see what is missing in the world and
yeah,
take your good or your service and fill that need. The downfall is when you think, "Oh, I can do anything, so I have to do all of it all the time." And
yeah.
I think that's been dispelled, and I hope that it continues to be.
That's fantastic. Now, to finish off, is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't?
Um, I think the one question I really love getting is who are the people that have helped you, who have helped develop this business or developed how you look at things, how you see the world.
Mm.
Obviously, my family has played a huge part in it, both from my parents. Obviously, I did a whole story about my dad, my kiddos, my nuclear family. But as I look back on my journey, specifically in entrepreneurship, there are three women who each played a pivotal role in it. So, one planted the idea in me that I could be an entrepreneur. One
Right.
taught me about what purpose is. And the third actually walked me through the logistics of opening and running a business in a way that was legal, healthy, and sustainable. And I love that the story of my business, the current business that we're sitting in, was informed by those three women. That really, I think, is something very, very special.
Fantastic. Well, you are standing on the shoulders of giants who had
Hmm.
done things and come before you. So that's beautiful that they supported you in creating your business now.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Erica, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with our community today. It always inspires me when we meet entrepreneurs who find that balance of work and life and family and really learning to prioritize what's important because money isn't everything.
Yep.
Thank you for empowering so many women with your knowledge and your skills and your coaching as well.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you. I want to say one more quick thing, which is that I don't want everyone to think that those coffee mugs are always completely equal, right? I think that the challenge is recognizing when this coffee mug is the most important, or when this one is, in different times, right? So just want to encourage that too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a speaking platform. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share these stories to uplift you, to empower you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. Today, you've met a coach, a business strategist who is helping entrepreneurs to work smart and not hard, to set those boundaries, to prioritize what's really important in life. So if you need some support, look her up. She's on LinkedIn. Erica, thank you again for being
Thank
here
you
with
so
us.
much, Gertrude. You have a great day.
And bye for now, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.